mentioned the number of plots that you're working with today. I know that the soils there are, for the most part, calcareous, but you have myriad different soil variations across all of those little plots that you draw from, right?
That's true. Yeah, so we are growing from 950 meters lower in the valley where our Syrah is planted, and now some of the heritage grapes that we are planting are called Mixasi, and those are going down low, all the way through Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc in the higher vineyards, and also from southwest all the way around to northeast facing. So there's quite a lot of just variation on the mountainside.
Mhm.
But I would say the consistent element would be clay in the soil
Yes.
and limestone. So the clay is what allows us to manage dry farming because there is no rain. The vine, the root system of the vine needs to act as a carrot and basically go down, straight to find enough humidity in the soil to be able to thrive. And we do other things like the vines are trained very low. They're usually a meter 10, a meter 20 separated from each other to reduce the amount of competition for resources, et cetera, in the soil. So there are things that you can do to manage that, but the soil, there are differences plot to plot, and it's something that you can actually see.
For want of a better term, you chose to go down the kind of Bordeaux route when it came to grape choices for the most part. I've heard your husband actually say online that he prefers being compared to the Italian Bulgari region than he does Bordeaux. But what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so that was a really interesting sort of discussion that we had over a period of years. What did we want to plant? And then obviously choosing the clones within those varietals. But um, we opted to go the route of familiar varietals, but allowing them to show their expression in a part of the world which is less familiar to the consumer. So by planting Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon, for example, and blending them to do this, the La Renaissance blend, which is probably our flagship wine, where maybe 75% of what we produce is this Bordeaux blend. By creating something that was going to be familiar, but also not, I think it probably allowed us to be something that consumers, especially someone in your position as a former, as a sommelier working in the trade in restaurant situations, you could say to your customers, hey, I know your taste, and I can always offer you this. And if that's what you want, great. But if you're interested in trying something which is going to blow your mind,
Yep, yep.
and I can even go the blind route and not tell you what its provenance is, and it makes it. There's always so much to learn, right, in our industry. There's always more to understand, and there's just the learning curve is fairly steep. And growing wines in Lebanon, we wanted, it's 8-9 million bottles as a country nationally total production, which is this much, it's a drop in the world stage. But when you can do really nice wines and have them express where they're coming from, I think that's the ideal.
Now, when I first started studying wine, there were a certain producer from Becha Valley that I became very familiar with. How does the terroir differ from that of the Becha Valley when one is talking about because the grape varieties are quite similar across many properties down there, and what you
Frequently, yeah. I mean, there are some producers who are using more local, heritage varietals than us.
yes, yep,
We're just using this Mixasi grape. But the Bekaa itself, I think it would probably run about 80% of all of Lebanon's wines.
oh
And
really?
most of Lebanon's agriculture happens in the Bekaa Valley. And it's so if you can picture the region, the Mediterranean Sea, mountains rise up out of the Mediterranean.
Yep.
I don't actually know which way to orient for you, but maybe the Mediterranean Sea is here and this is west. There are mountains that rise up here. Our project is looking out this direction.
Yes.
If you go up over those mountains, you've got the Bekaa Valley between, on this side mountains and on this side. This is the border with Syria. So the Bekaa Valley runs north to south, and it's generally flat, and there is a water table. I haven't tested it myself, but what I understand is that it's about 2 meters below the level of the soil. So there is a water table that,
yeah, with regards to all the agriculture being there, the majority.
Right, right. Exactly. And I know some wines are grown on the mountainsides on either side, but you've also got, an element of higher temperatures during the day and probably lower temperatures at night, whereas the variation in our area is much narrower. Like I said, 85 and sunny, and in the evenings it would get down into the high 60s maybe. So there are differences. I can't speak to the soil qualities. I'm not as familiar with that, and I don't want to overstep. But yeah, there are differences, and I think we're doing our best to take advantage of what we have available to us working in this little village of Bhamdoun.
I understand. I believe your annual production is around about 25,000 bottles a year now.
Correct. Yeah, which is from 60 acres from 24 hectares. That's about a hectoliter per hectare.
Yes. Yeah.
And for people who are math whizzes, if you quickly run the numbers in your head, you're going to land at about 1/3 of what would be a typical Bordeaux yield. And there are lots of reasons for that. I mean, the dry farming, working on a mountainside, almost everything is done by hand, which is exactly how we want it to be. We could be working a lot more land than we are, but then I think we would lose something in terms of, how much oversight we have about the end product.
Now, I have to ask you, where does most of that wine go to? Where does it end up?
Yeah, so if you'd asked that question about 12, 15 years ago, I would have had a certain answer. And now, with all the challenges that the Lebanese have faced sort of generally, politically, economically, that terrible explosion, et cetera, I think we're landing closer to probably 2/3 of our wines are probably exported. We do have a small hotel and restaurant property in the village, and the restaurant is obviously where most of our wines are sold domestically, although we're in all the major hotels, and restaurants kind of come and go. So Lebanon has a very interesting tourism scene, which it's stayed fairly healthy considering everything that's going on, and we're a part of that to a small degree. But I think we didn't expect that we would be exporting quite that amount of wine initially. I think we were hoping to land at around 50%. We have, some nice markets around the world. Canada is obviously up and coming, and the US is very strong. I'm American, obviously, and the UK, some small markets in Europe, Malaysia. I mean, there are just little bits here and there, but we don't have that much wine to work with. So it's as I said to you before we started the interview, we place our wines where Naji and I want to visit, which tends to be where we have friends and family. So.
Well, Jill, thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution today. I really appreciate your time, giving us an
absolutely
down there at Chateau Belle-Vue. Hopefully, we'll see you in Ontario at some point in the not too distant future.
I would love to connect. Thanks so much, Jamie.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye.